It's really so sad to be here, Don. And as you said, you and I have talked so many times about these very tragic deaths. And when this news was announced today, people were just so much in shock, so devastated. It reminded us of the death of John Ritter, another shocking celebrity who died way too soon. But with Robin Williams, the way he died, this apparent suicide, had everybody talking about, you know, why didn't a lot of people see these signs? Yes, we knew he had been in rehab. We knew he had had these troubles. But Robin Williams was someone who, as I've been hearing you talk, made so many people laugh. I just want to share with you some of our observations at Access Hollywood as I was talking to the crew before I came over here. And what we remembered about Robin Williams, whenever we were in a junket with him, an interview situation with him, he was the guy who came into the room and spoke to everybody. He spoke to the camera people, the audio people, he spoke to the producers. And that is rare. Not everybody does that. Many celebrities, they may come in, they just sit down, do the interview, and then when the red light is off, they're out the door. That happens a lot. But Robin Williams was one of those guys who just came in and was just so nice and just lit up the room with just a positive energy. And after the interview was over, oftentimes he would stay and just tell jokes. And I heard you talking about it's hard to prepare for an interview with Robin Williams. You couldn't prepare. You just knew just to be completely on your toes.
It was fun to watch.
Such a devastating loss.
It was fun to watch an interview actually try to corral Robin because you know it didn't happen. There was no way that you could do it.
Fool's errand. And Hal, you've talked about that too. I mean, we all knew him as having manic energy. He was so manic on the stage, but behind the scenes, what was he like?
He was so affable as to almost tamp it down. There was a coiled spring aspect to him that was just, this energy was so ready to burst all the time that even when he was being kind of deferential to everyone around him, you could tell he was doing it by pushing down his natural instinct, which was very explosive, very energetic, and very funny. And it was almost as if he was proud of the fact that he could be funny, and he knew he had a skill in this area, but he almost looked at it as sort of this weapon that could be waved around, uncaringly. He didn't want to eat people's, energy or time unnecessarily. So around a lot of comics, he was actually, very tepid almost in some ways until he went on stage, and then all bets were off. But he always had this energy that belied his empathy. And I think while a lot of people talk about him not being able to love himself or that going on, I can't speak to that at all. But what I can speak to is what I saw. And what I saw was a man who cared so much about how everyone else was feeling that I think he carried that with him. You could just feel that love and respect, and that's why he seemed to act out. It wasn't the attention thing or some sort of, like I said, the comic that needed the attention or feels sad inside about themselves, but that he could almost empathetically feel everybody else's bad week, and he wanted to get rid of it for them.
It was just who he was, right?
Yeah.
And Chris said, listen, let's talk about this, because I was doing my research, and I thought that Robin Williams was someone who, had EGOT. It was an EGOT, right? Had the Emmy, the Tony, and on and on. But he did not win a Tony.
Grammy.
And a Grammy. But he had everything but that Tony, even though he was on Broadway. It would be great if they gave him one posthumously, and then he'd be an EGOT. But, I mean, not many people get to have that kind of a career.
No, Dawn, honestly, I think the president put it best when he said that he came to us as an alien, but he ended up touching every aspect of the human spirit. And if you've been looking on social media at all, Twitter is devastated. And what I find so moving about it is that you have people like, Steve Martin, who is obviously the actor and comedian, and then you have Miley Cyrus, and it just shows the range of how many people he touched and the effect that he had on them. I mean, I remember him from Dead Poet Society, and I only wish that I had a teacher like that. And there's a lot of millennials that first met him when he was Aladdin. So I think that to say the word comic genius a lot of times is overused, but in this case, I absolutely think that it's appropriate. And as Joy said earlier in the show, his brain, he had such a big brain. He was so quick on his feet. And if you actually listen to what he was saying, he was so astute. He was so political. He knew exactly what was going on. And you just don't get that kind of, you know, that doesn't happen that often. And certainly in a lifetime, maybe once. And Robin Williams was definitely that person.
All right.